My colleagues, we have returned from recess. The committee on the whole is back in order. Senator Sabina, you have comments to make on the motion?
Yeah, just a comment that was actually clarified during the break time, during recess. Just my concern that it might have the opposite effect, because my understanding is if we mandate something in local law, then we pay for it. So I guess maybe I could pose a question to the author if she can comment on that.
Senator Sean, do you yield to the question?
Thank you very much.
Okay, Senator Sabina, please state the question.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. So I think the
you already have
question is if we are putting this program into Guam law, if we are putting a funding source from Guam law here, then we are going to be forced to pay it and unable to use the CARES Act money. But my understanding for the use of the CARES Act is that the main restriction of CARES Act money is that it cannot be used for any government shortfall. So if there is a program that we are establishing in response to the coronavirus crisis, then CARES Act money is we are able to use it.
Senator Sabina, did that answer your question that you were posing on Senator Sheldon?
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else like to speak on the motion? Am I understanding there's one objection, Senator Moylan, right, on the motion? There is? We will now call for the vote. All in favor of the motion? Correction. I'll ask Senator Shelton, please close on our motion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate all of the comments and the discussion to move this amendment along. If I could just ask for a quick recess, and I'd like to offer an amendment to the amendment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Back to recess. My colleagues were back from recess. Committee of the Whole is called to order. Senator Amanda, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chair, and if our colleagues can follow along, there is an amendment to the amendment, and it is labeled FA367 COTW ALS L13P6 funding.pdf. And after the original amendment, that adds the line E. It also adds the line, no local funds may be used for this program as long as CARES Act funds are available to encumber, obligate, or expend. And Mr. Chair, I understand that we had many concerns from our colleagues who do not want to see any of the local funding used, and to be reassured, as was told to us in the Committee of the Whole earlier this evening. So we aren't appropriating any federal funds here, and we are putting an extra measure to ensure that the CARES Act funds are utilized before any local government of Guam funds are to be touched.
My colleagues, there's amendment to the amendment. All in favor of the, or does anyone wish to speak on the amendment? Anyone who wants to speak? Senator?
Wait, Mr. Chair, if I may, I know that some of our colleagues are having a hard time finding it.
Okay.
So again, it is FA367 COTW ALS L13P6 funding.pdf. And if you're looking at the at the Google Drive, it's right next to the original amendment.
All right, thank you. Minority Leader, you wish to speak on the amendment? To the amendment?
Yeah, can I just have a 1 minute recess?
Okay, we have a quick recess. My colleagues, we've returned from recess. Committee of the Whole is called back to order. Senator Tello, you have the floor last.
Mr. Chair, and thank you for that short recess. I just wanted to clarify with the author of this amendment to the amendment, and I have no problem with just making a slight correction that legal can do on their own, and it's just simply on letter E, any coronis aid relief and economic securities CARES Act, and then incorporate United States Public Law 116-136. Funding available to Imagahagan Bohan. And then further it says, no local funds may be used for this program as long as the CARES Act, which has been explained in the first, in the beginning of letter E. Funds are available to encumber, obligated, or expend. So that's all it is. It's just to clarify that the CARES Act and its public law statute. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody want to speak on that? No objection? Now to the does anyone want to speak to the amendment?
I'd like to call for the vote, Mr. Chair.
Call for the vote. That sounds like a great idea.
Wait.
There are no objections?
Yes, stand by, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, if I'm not mistaken, it was I that made the first objection to the first amendment, because first we've already dispensed with the amendment to the amendment that I just incorporated, right? So that's where we're at right now, that we dispense no objection to the amendment to the
There
amendment?
was no objection to your amendment,
Okay.
okay?
And then now, so now we're on the amendment to the amendment.
That's correct.
Okay. And, okay, I'll wait for that vote, or
Okay.
that, no objection.
Are there any objection on the motion of the amendment?
Right.
None? Now to the amendment of Senator Tello
Thank you, Mr.
to
Chair.
the amendment.
Considering the circumstances, Mr. Chair, and if, I'm not sure how this rolls when a person who objects, I guess both people would have to come forward, but I will do so right now. I made an objection because of the issue of the spending of general fund money, so I would like to withdraw my objection. I am satisfied with this amendment, which requires them to use, basically it does the same thing, it requires them to use CARES Act first before any kind of local funding, as long as it's available. And if you look at the legislation, I believe there's a time frame too in this legislation to fulfill on the applications. So I'd like to withdraw my objection to that, to the main amendment.
All right, thank you. Any objection to her withdrawal of her objection? There being none? Senator Jim, you still don't have an objection? No, you withdraw yours also? Okay, you need to move to withdraw it, Senator Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wish to withdraw my objection.
Now, on the floor amendment, as amended, with the amendment, are there any objection? Yes, Madam Vice.
No objection, Mr. Chair.
No
I just thought
objection?
we can speak on the amendment to the amendment.
Oh, you want to speak of the,
Just real quick. Mr. Chair, I'd just like to thank the sponsor of this amendment to the amendment. I'd like to thank her collaboration. I'd like to thank her forward thinking and her efforts really just to work with the body rather than derail something that could help us and help us to help the people. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Vice. Are there any objection to the amendment as amended and amended? None? So the motion passes. We will now proceed. My colleagues, I remind you, it's 9:17 right now. I am hoping that we will end before 10, because we will end our session at 10 o'clock. Okay? So moving along, we will now move to you, Senator Amanda.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I have two more very simple amendments. The first one is FA 367 COTWALS L8P2. So this is beginning on line 8, page 2. As one of the previous speakers mentioned in the Committee of the Whole, We were missing a section in the bill to establish the program. So letter A of section 2 will now read, the Azuda y Mangafa Help for Families program is hereby established by this act. And letter B to strike out subject to an appropriation by a legislature in Guahan, and to go straight into the director of the Department of Revenue and Taxation shall administer the Azuda y Mangafa Help for Families program.
Thank you, Senator Amanda. Does anyone like to speak on the amendment? There being none, any objection? None? So passed. Senator Amanda, you have another?
Thank you very much. And as one of the previous speakers during the Committee of the Whole also mentioned, that this bill may leave this relief, the stimulus payment for families up for garnishment, perhaps from the Guam Memorial Hospital or for any other government debt. So I'd like to offer this amendment, which is FA367 COTW ALSL 16 P5, beginning on line 16 of page 5, to add a new letter E that reads, any payment allowed or made to any individual under the Azuda y Mangafa Help for Families program shall not be subject to reduction or offset for debts owed to the government of Guam, and to also allow the Legislative Council to make technical corrections.
Is there anyone that would like to speak on that amendment? There being none, any objection? None? Motion passes. Senator Amanda, do you have anything else?
That's all for my amendments.
There being
Thank
none,
you.
the next one would be Senator Sabina. You have two.
Yes, thank you.
So,
Thank you,
which
Mr.
one would you start with?
So I'll start with FA367 COTW SFP L3-6 P6. Okay, thank you, Mr.
Please
Chair.
continue.
So the amendment that I'd like to proffer is on page 6, line 3 to 6, section 5, under funding, notwithstanding any other provision of law, rule, or regulation, Imagahagan Guahan is authorized to transfer $10 million plus any additional amount needed for administrative cost to the Department of Revenue and Taxation for the purposes of this act as may be available from the following. And so I think this is basically in consideration, when we pass laws or mandates, that there is administrative cost that to be borne by the agency. And considering the Department of Revenue and Taxation has had to implement a huge, stimulus plan in addition to carrying out the tax refunds. And it's great to see a lot of the workers there. They're pulling together to make things happen for the people of Guam. And I think it's just out of respect that we also provide the resources that are necessary to carry this out. I want to note too, for the record, that under the CARES Act, they were allotted $6 million. But that was before this bill was put in on the floor. And considering that they do have to upgrade a lot of their facility to ensure that they're safe and the public is safe, and also carrying out a lot of the stimulus funding, I think that was initially allocated for those purposes. So if there are any additional administrative costs that are borne from this, I want to make sure that they have the resources that they can implement this as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Senator Sabina. Does anyone, my colleagues, wish to speak on that amendment? There being none, any objection to that amendment? No objection. Motion passed. Senator Sabina, you still have another one?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next amendment is FA367 COTW SFP L19-20 P6. So the amendment's on page 6, line 19 through 20. It's under section 6, reporting. Upon the lifting of the public health emergency declaration for Guam, the Department of Revenue and Taxation and the Department of Administration shall submit a report to the Speaker and the Legislature in Guahan, which shall include the cumulative amount of payments made under the Azuda y Mangafa Help for Families program and the total administrative cost to facilitate this act, and the authorized amounts transferred by Imagahagan Guahan under Section 4 of this act. So again, it's to provide some consistency when it comes to administrative cost, so that there's transparency in regards to implementation of the bill.
Thank you, Senator Sabina. Does anyone would like to speak to that amendment? There being none, is there any objection to that amendment? No objection. Motion passes. My colleagues, there's no other amendment I see on the drive. I'd ask the author of the bill to please close on her bill.
I'd like
Oh.
to speak on the bill.
You like to speak? Okay.
Yes,
Or if anybody would like to speak, Senator Therese?
thank you. I just want to say that the bill is a good bill. Well, the intent of the bill is a very good intent. It's to give some money to those people who were exempted through the federal legislation from receiving that, $1,200 or $300 or $500, relief from the CARES Act or from the, federal economic aid. And so it's good that, I want to commend the sponsor for staying focused on that and making sure that those people will, see some of the benefit of this, or see some aid. I think it's very obvious from what we've seen on Guam that there are people who still need some aid. They've been out of work for 3 months, many of these people. There's 21,000 or more now have applied for unemployment. And so, unfortunately, we got involved in this, debate as to whether we're going to use these source of funds that these people from the administration are saying are no longer available, or they're using it whether they get appropriation or not, and versus, using the money that came to Guam for these purposes to give aid, direct relief. And so, we learned some things tonight. We learned some things about these funds, whether they were available or not, whether they're being spent and what they're being spent on. We also learned that the CARES Act itself, we received $117 million. We received guidance on April 22. They've committed 40 million, maybe 50 at the most. The rest looks like it's going to go to the government of Guam agencies. So $40 million in direct relief is really it's a small proportion of that 117 million. And I'm hoping that this will send a signal also to the governor that more direct relief. And if the government of Guam agencies can get reimbursement from FEMA for their expenditures, such as putting up plexiglass and things like that, then I'm hoping that they will go that route and that they would take this CARES Act money while we still have time and get it to those people who are still waiting for their unemployment checks, that are still waiting in line for food, and food runs out, still waiting for shelter because, complications, Mr. Chair, from unemployment, of course. And so I just think that there's a lot more we can still focus on, and that we should. And so we've been told to hands off of this CARES money, but I'm very glad that the sponsor is focused and that we're going to urge them, since it's taken a while, that they should do that with this money. Situs Masi, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Therese. Does anyone else like to speak on the bill? Yes, Senator Tello.
So just Masi, Mr. Chair. I know we're all very tired here, so I won't make it too long, but I just want everyone to know that we're all doing our part to contribute, especially those who are left out. There was no intention not to help anyone here, but we had to be fiscally responsible, and that's important. That's our job here. I mean, that's one job that we have as senators, passing a budget, a balanced budget, and creating legislation. So it's important that when we do this, that we have all our facts in front of us. And if we see something that's not right, then it's important that we bring it up. I think everybody here is happy with the results, the end results. I know I am, because I know now that we can go into the CARES Act, which how we got here at this point, we're just too tired and it doesn't matter. But I do know, Mr. Chair, this also doesn't stop the governor from adding additional funding to this at all. I mean, that happened the last time when a good senator, one of our senators, introduced legislation, and next thing you know, there was the program Salapi money there. And there's one for businesses when legislation was introduced using CARES Act. Next thing you know, there was a program that she stood up for small businesses. So, Mr. Chair, I think that maybe $500 doesn't go a long way these days. It sure doesn't. So maybe the governor could actually increase that amount, double it. Hopefully. Well, she can do it. There's nothing stopping her. If these individuals did not get their $1,200 stimulus check, then why only $500? Why they should be entitled to $1,200? I mean, many people are on their own at the age of 19, and so, Mr. Chair, again, I thank my colleagues for seeing the importance of being fiscally responsible and incorporating this amendment in there. And I appreciate your time, and I'm sorry we women gave you a hard time, but women will be women. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Tello, Minority Leader. Does anyone like to speak? Senator, Madam Vice Speaker.
Si Masi, Mr. Chair. I don't think that I gave you a hard time. I think I was doing my job and giving the opportunity for me to speak, so I thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, this bill, Bill number 367-35, is an act to allocate payments to eligible Guam residents during the state of public health emergency due to the COVID-19 pandemic, to be known as the Azuda Managafa Help for Families Program. And this bill was created because the sponsor realized that there was an oversight on the federal government side. She discovered a gap several weeks ago in our public hearing. And that gap was that the direct aid packages did not provide direct stimulus payments to families with dependents over the age of 16 years old. So you're in high school, you're 17, they're not accounted for. You're 18, you're not accounted for. You're going to school, you're not accounted for. And so, just like the original federal stimulus package, per dependent, each family was given $500. And this is us realizing that there is a gap. And these families were not given this compensation because of a federal oversight. And so the sponsor of this bill, realizing this gap, worked to find ways and avenues to try to close the gap. I thank the sponsor for allowing me to co-sponsor this bill, because we have to try everything at this point. Yes, our island is hurting. Yes, there's more that can be done. But when we have a solution, let's work together to make the solution happen, whether it's our name on the top or not. We've done an unemployment bill, a stimulus, a supplemental bill. We've done a RISE Act bill. We're trying to help the people. So if any one of us has a measure to bring before us to help the people, then let's just do that. I want to commend the sponsor for her acts of professionalism today. I want to commend her for finding solutions to every concern that we've had so that we can all agree on something. And I think she did a great job at finding us and helping us to meet that middle ground, Mr. Chair, for the sake of the people. We may not agree on certain avenues and techniques. We may not agree on the semantics, but she found a way to all make us meet in the middle as a bipartisan body in this measure. So thank you, Mr. Chair. I thank the sponsor again for the magnificent work that she has done tonight, and also yourself for your patience. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Vice. Madam Speaker, you have something you want to say?
Mr. Chair, and just like the retiring speaker, I just want to chime in and support the efforts for this legislation and thank the good author from ASEN for giving me the opportunity to be your co-sponsor. Truly, there was a gap in providing resources for these very young folks, and I just want to say that in the efforts of making sure that we close that gap, this was an opportunity to do that. And our legislative secretary, in introducing this bill, has done a very good job in addressing it. So I just want to say thank you to her, but more importantly, humbly ask that our colleagues literally look at this bill and give it the support it truly needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Senator Sabina, before I get to the author.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make a quick comment that I commend the author for her leadership in ensuring that, an overlooked segment of our society did not receive necessary relief. And I just want to commend her for her work, and I rise in support of this bill. And if I can also ask to be a co-sponsor as well. Thank you.
Senator Amanda, could you please, on the motion to add?
No objection.
No objection? Thank you. So ordered. Senator Amanda, if you could please proceed to close on Bill 367-35 LS.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank you for the time you've given us today, the panel that joined us for the Committee of the Whole, to BBMR Director, Mr. Lester Carlson, to Mr. Ed Burden of Department of Administration, and Mrs. Daphne Shimizu of the Department of Rev and Tax. I want to thank them for all of the answers and the data that they provided to us. And I also want to thank our colleagues tonight, because I know that a lot of people at home over the last few months have been losing hope because of everything that we are facing today, this crisis, this pandemic. And I hope that knowing that we are trying to find every way to help the people of Guam, especially those who have been left out of this stimulus payment, federal stimulus payment, that this brings a little hope to our families tonight. So I want to thank all of our colleagues for their support and for working together and for wanting to do right by our families. And I want to thank them for helping us build consensus to serve the people of Guam, and to help our Manhoban, our Mangafa, and to ensure that no one gets left behind, to really honor this island value that we have of taking care of one another and honoring and loving our families. So again, I want to thank everyone who contributed to this bill, who offered amendments, who added to the discussion to strengthen the legislation so that we can get this help, this stimulus, this money into the people of Guam's hands as soon as possible. And so with that, Tsuduas Masi, and Tsuduas Masi to all of the people of Guam who have been watching us and following along, and to our team who is here until almost 10 o'clock tonight, thank you for helping us do this. And Mr. Chair, I'd like to add you as a co-sponsor, as well as Senator Will Castro.
Are there any objection to that motion? No objection. Senator Amanda, do you have a motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to rise from the Committee of the Whole with the recommendation that Bill number 367-35 LS, as amended in the Committee of the Whole, be placed in the third reading file.
On the motion to rise from the Committee of the Whole with the recommendation that Bill number 367-35 LS as amended in the committee of the whole, be placed on the third reading file. Are there any objection? With all the amendments attacked. Seeing and hearing no objection, motion carries. We stand in recess.
Tell him, is he gonna? Imino 85 na legislatura in Guahan is back from recess. At this time, I will recognize the Majority Leader, Vice Speaker Nelson. You are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Notwithstanding the House rules, I move to go back to motions.
No, ma'am. Vice Speaker, can you work the motion to
Thank you,
report
Madam-
back to the body, please?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wish to report back to the body that Bill number 367-35LS was deliberated and amended in the Committee of the Whole with the recommendation to place on the third reading file.
On that motion to place, are there any objections? Hearing or seeing none, motion carries. Majority Leader, Vice Speaker Nelson, you are still recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Notwithstanding the House rules, I move to go back to motions.
On that motion, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Majority Leader, Vice Speaker Nelson, you are still recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to resolve into the Committee of the Whole for the purpose of receiving the state of the Judiciary address by the Honorable F. Philip Carbolito, Chief Justice of Guam, that is scheduled for 10 a.m. Friday, June 12, 2020, and that it be conducted in its formal manner, and that we recess to prepare for the same.
Colleagues, 1 second, clerk. Colleagues, a motion was made to resolve into the Committee of the Whole for the purposes of receiving the State of the Judiciary address by the Honorable Philip Carbolito, Chief Justice of Guam, that is scheduled for 10 a.m. Friday, June 12, and that it be conducted in its formal manner, and that we recess to prepare for the same. Are there any objections? Hearing or seeing none, motion carries. Hold on, colleagues. Before we leave for the evening, I just want to note, because this is a little bit different and because we are working with the logistics, I ask that my colleagues come in at least 30 minutes earlier, just so that we can make sure that everything is in order because of the risk management instructions that we need to work with. Thank you very much. Have a safe evening.